What happens when you stay silent longer than her? Most men never find out, because most men break first. They text back too soon, they explain themselves, they beg for clarity, they chase answers that were never going to give them peace. But the man who chooses silence, the one who embraces the unbearable weight of stillness, discovers a truth that is both terrifying and liberating. Silence is not weakness. Silence is a weapon. When you stay silent, you don't just withhold words, you withhold validation. And validation is the oxygen that fuels the ego. Think about it. Every time she throws a little test, every time she pulls back, every time she leaves you in uncertainty, what does she expect? She expects you to fold, to ask, what's wrong? To beg, can we fix this? To chase after the love that is already slipping through your fingers. But when you meet her noise with nothing but silence, you send a message far louder than any speech. You show her that you are unshaken, that your respect for yourself is greater than your need for her attention. This is where dark psychology begins to take root. Because silence flips the script in ways words never could. Words can be twisted, ignored, manipulated. But silence echoes in the mind. She replays your lack of response in her head. She questions why you didn't react. She wonders if she still has control. And the longer you stay silent, the more those doubts multiply like a storm in her subconscious. Understand this. Silence creates tension, and tension is power. When you stop feeding her the constant reassurance she's used to, her imagination fills the gap. Did you move on? Did you find someone better or worse for her? Did you finally realize your worth and choose yourself over her games? That's the dagger. That's the shift. She expected you to crumble. Instead, you stood in silence, unmoved. And here's the truth that hurts. Most men will never experience this power because they fear it. They fear what will happen if they don't explain, if they don't defend, if they don't chase. But the Stoic man, the one who practices discipline, self-control, and respect, he knows the secret. He knows that silence can be louder than thunder. He knows that silence forces the other person to sit with their own actions. He knows that silence reveals who actually has control. This is the battlefield of modern relationships. Not who shouts the loudest, not who texts the longest paragraphs, not who argues until 3 a.m. The real battlefield is silence, and when you stay silent longer than her, you win. So right now, if you want to master the art of silence, do this for me. Hit that like button, subscribe to join this Stoic brotherhood, and comment down below, "My silence is my power." Say it again, type it with strength, "My silence is my power." Because once you embrace this truth, your life and your relationships will never look the same again. Now let's begin. Silence. Most people think of it as empty. They think it's nothingness, a void, a lack of communication. But that's where they're wrong. Silence is not empty. It's full of tension, full of meaning, full of unanswered questions that rattle around inside the mind until it drives a person restless. See, the human mind is designed to seek patterns. We are creatures addicted to input, constantly scanning for signals, for reactions, for validation that confirms we matter. Every reply, every emoji, every glance of attention is like a drug. And when that cycle gets cut off, the brain doesn't relax. Nope. The brain actually goes into withdrawal. Silence becomes the loudest sound in the room. Think about it this way. When someone doesn't respond, you don't simply move on. You think, you overthink. You start asking questions like, did I say something wrong? Did I push too far? Are they mad at me? Are they losing interest? Have they found someone better? That's the chaos silence creates. And here's where the power lies. When you stay silent longer than her, you flip her own psychology against her. This is not cruelty, it's clarity, it's a test, and it's a mirror. Silence forces her to face the weight of her own actions. Every ignored message, every unanswered call on your end, those aren't just nothing. They are reflections. They bounce back her behavior and make her confront it. She has no distractions, no arguments, no explanations to hide behind. All she has is the echo of her own choices, bouncing back in the void of your silence. And here's where the dark psychology kicks in. People crave certainty. Even bad news is better than no news, because at least it gives the brain closure. But silence? Silence denies closure. Silence says nothing, and that nothing becomes everything. It opens an infinite number of doors in her imagination, and she has no idea which one you're standing behind. Did you lose interest? Did you move on? Did you decide she wasn't worth it anymore? Or are you just calm, unshaken, living your life while she wonders? Do you see it now? Silence is not passive, it is active. It's not weak, it's strategic. Every second you hold the line, every hour you choose not to explain yourself, every day you remain calm and detached, the pressure builds on the other side, and the longer it goes, the more unbearable it becomes. She starts replaying old conversations. She rereads her own texts, looking for clues. She asks herself, was I too harsh? Did I push him away? Did I underestimate him? She might even check your social media, trying to decode your silence through your posts, your likes, your stories. Your absence consumes her thoughts more than your words ever could. And here's the brutal truth. Anger doesn't haunt people, silence does. When you yell, when you rant, when you send paragraph after paragraph trying to make her understand, she gets clarity. She knows you still care because you're still bleeding energy into her. But when you go silent, you become unpredictable. And unpredictability is terrifying. It makes her question her control, question her value, question if she was ever as important as she thought. That's why most men lose this game. Because silence is uncomfortable. It feels unnatural. It feels like weakness. But it's not. It's discipline. It's mastery. It's you proving to yourself that your emotions don't own you. You own them. It's you proving that you don't need to explain yourself to anyone. It's you proving that your self-respect is louder than your craving for attention. Silence, when mastered, is a weapon sharper than any insult, heavier than any argument. It cuts deeper because it forces the other person to stab themselves with their own doubts, their own insecurities, their own imagination. So let me remind you of this truth. When you stay silent longer than her, it is not about ignoring. It's about holding your ground. It's about letting her wrestle with her own mind while you stand unshaken. It's about realizing that the unknown is far more powerful than the known. And if you understand this, if you truly get how silence unsettles the mind, then prove it to yourself right now by typing this in the comments. The unknown bends to my silence. Say it, believe it, type it. Because the man who bends the unknown through silence is the man who owns the battlefield of the mind. Every woman who plays games in silence expects one thing, that you'll break before she does, that you'll cave under the pressure, that your need for her attention will outweigh your respect for yourself. And sadly, in most cases, she's right. Because most men do fold. They text first, they apologize for things they didn't even do, they chase validation as if their worth depends on it. And when they do, they lose the battle before it ever began. But here's where the difference lies between the ordinary man and the stoic man. The ordinary man cannot handle the tension of silence. He feels it pressing on him like a weight. He mistakes silence for rejection. He mistakes stillness for defeat, so he acts out of desperation. He reaches out thinking, If I just say something, maybe she'll come back. But desperation is the language of the weak. And once she senses weakness, once she sees that she can pull your strings simply by doing nothing, the power is gone. Now contrast that with the man who refuses to break, the man who sees her silence, who feels the weight of the test, but stands tall anyway. He doesn't rush in with a, "Hey, just checking on you." He doesn't write novels of emotional explanations. He doesn't hand over his power by proving how badly he needs her. Nope. He holds the line. He lets her sit with the silence. He lets her stew in her own thoughts. And here's the secret. When you don't break, she does. Because silence, when used correctly, flips the test on its head. At first, she expects you to chase. She expects you to crave her attention, to fear her withdrawal. But as the hours turn into days, and the days into longer stretches, the uncertainty begins to gnaw at her. Why hasn't he reached out? Why is he not begging? Did he lose interest? Did he replace me? Or worse, did he realize his worth? Understand this. She expected silence to be her weapon. She thought she could control you with absence. But when you outlast her, when you stay silent longer than she does, her weapon turns back on her. What was supposed to make you desperate ends up making her insecure. What was supposed to weaken you only strengthens you. This is why the Stoic man thrives where others collapse. Because he doesn't live for temporary validation, he lives by principles. His respect for himself is greater than his hunger for her attention. His need for peace outweighs his need for drama. He knows that silence is not weakness, it's patience. And patience, when weaponized, is unstoppable. Think of it like a battlefield. Two armies face off, waiting for the other to make the first move. The weaker side always attacks too soon, burning through their energy, revealing their position. But the stronger side waits. They conserve their strength. They force the enemy to move first, and in that moment, they seize the advantage. Silence works the same way. She expects you to make the first move. She expects you to show your cards. But when you don't, she's the one left exposed. And let's go deeper. Why do most men break first? Because silence is uncomfortable. It feels like rejection. It feels like you're losing her. And that fear eats away at the average man until he can't take it anymore. He reaches out not because he truly wants to, but because he's trying to soothe the anxiety inside his chest. That's not love, that's dependency. And dependency is chains. But when you refuse to break, you prove something to yourself that's bigger than her. You prove that you don't need constant reassurance. You prove that you can endure discomfort. You prove that your mind is stronger than your emotions. And that, right there, is the foundation of Stoic power. So remember this. When she expects you to break first, let her wait. Let her wonder. Let her be the one pacing the floor, checking her phone, rereading her own messages. Let her be the one who feels the silence closing in. Because when you hold your silence longer than she ever imagined, you don't just win her respect, you win your freedom. If you understand this, if you feel the weight of this truth, then type it in the comments right now. I don't break. I stand unshaken. Say it with conviction. Because the man who refuses to break first is the man who cannot be controlled. Every relationship, whether it's romantic, personal, or even professional, has an invisible scale, a balance of power. At times, one side carries more weight. At other times, it shifts back. But make no mistake, silence is the lever that tips that scale faster than anything else. And when you stay silent longer than her, that balance of power doesn't just shift, it collapses entirely in your favor. At the beginning, she feels confident. She thinks she has the upper hand. She believes she controls the pace, the rhythm, the emotional climate of the connection. She pulls away, stops replying or goes cold, expecting you to come chasing. because that's what she's seen 100 times before. She knows the pattern. Men hate silence, so they rush in to fill it. But when you don't, when you stand unshaken, quiet, patient, disciplined, that's when the shock hits. First, she feels curiosity. Why hasn't he broken yet? Why is he not chasing me? Is he really that detached? That curiosity soon morphs into confusion. Wait, did I miscalculate? Did I lose my grip? Did I overplay my hand? And confusion quickly mutates into insecurity. Because now, the control she thought she had is slipping through her fingers. This is the psychological switch, when her silence no longer feels like a weapon against you, but instead feels like a mirror turned back on her. She thought she was punishing you by withholding her voice, but instead you're punishing her by withholding yours even longer. Suddenly, she's the one waiting by the phone. She's the one scrolling through old conversations. She's the one overthinking every detail, while you carry on with your life in quiet, immovable strength. That's when respect enters the picture. Understand this. Respect is not won by chasing. Respect is not won by arguing or explaining. Respect is won by restraint, by the ability to remain calm when others are desperate for a reaction. When you show that her silence does not control you, you teach her something powerful. You cannot be moved unless you choose to move. And that realization changes everything, because now, instead of seeing you as predictable, she sees you as mysterious. Instead of seeing you as needy, she sees you as disciplined. Instead of believing she has the upper hand, she starts to question if she ever did. That's the power dynamic shift. And once it happens, it cannot be unseen. It's not just about her, though. This shift also transforms you. Because the moment you hold silence longer than someone who expected you to break, you feel something inside you harden. Your discipline, your dignity, your self-respect. You realize that you don't need external validation to survive. You don't need someone else's attention to feel strong. You are enough. And that is the most dangerous thing a man can realize in a world where weakness is constantly exploited. Let me put it another way. When you stay silent longer than her, you break an invisible chain. You no longer dance to her rhythm. You set your own. And once you set the rhythm, the entire interaction revolves around you. You become the anchor. She becomes the wave, crashing against you, trying to move you. But anchors don't move for waves. They hold firm. They remind the storm who really has the strength. The shift in power dynamics isn't loud. It doesn't come with fireworks or dramatic scenes. It comes in whispers. It comes in the way she starts to reach out again, the way she begins to test the waters, the way her words soften as she tries to close the gap your silence has created. And the longer you remain disciplined, the deeper the respect grows. This is why silence is feared, because it cannot be controlled. Words can be debated, arguments can be twisted, but silence? Silence is untouchable. It makes her play the game alone while you stand outside of it. And once you step outside the game, you control the entire board. So remember this truth. Silence isn't just about being quiet. It's about flipping the balance. It's about teaching her that her greatest weapon is useless against a man who has mastered his mind. It's about showing her that you cannot be moved by tests, by games, by withdrawals, because you have something stronger, self-respect. If you feel this lesson, type this into the comments right now. Respect is won in silence. Say it, believe it, claim it. Because the man who wins respect through silence is the man who shifts the power dynamic forever. One of the most powerful effects of silence is the illusion it creates. When you stay silent longer than her, it plants a thought in her mind that is far more painful than anything you could ever say: indifference. See, anger means you still care. Arguing, explaining, debating, it all shows that you're still emotionally invested. Even if it's negative energy, it's still energy. And as long as you're giving energy, she knows she still has a grip on you. But silence. Silence looks like you don't even care enough to fight. Silence looks like freedom. And freedom terrifies those who thought they had control. Let's break this down. When you go silent, she has no way of measuring your emotions. Did you stop caring? Did you move on? Did you decide she isn't worth your time anymore? She doesn't know. And the unknown always feels bigger than the known. Her mind starts running wild, filling the gaps with her worst fears. Suddenly your silence isn't just silence, it's a story she's writing in her head. And in that story, you've already outgrown her. This illusion of indifference is devastating, because if there's one thing human beings crave above all else, it's significance. Everyone wants to feel important, to feel irreplaceable. And when you stay silent, when you give her nothing, it feels like you've erased her significance in your life, like she doesn't matter anymore, like you've already stepped into a higher level of self-respect where her approval has no weight. And here's the paradox. She may have been the one who pulled away first. She may have been the one who stopped responding, who tested you with silence. But once you hold out longer than her, she no longer feels like the powerful one. She feels like the discarded one. She feels like she's on the outside looking in. And that feeling eats away at her pride. This is why the illusion of indifference is such a devastating psychological strike. You didn't curse her. You didn't insult her. You didn't beg. You didn't explain. You simply chose yourself. And your silence screamed louder than any argument could. To her, it looks like strength. To her, it looks like detachment. To her, it looks like you are a man who values his peace more than her presence. And here's the deeper truth. Silence doesn't just create the illusion of indifference for her. It creates the reality of detachment for you. The more you practice silence, the more you begin to see clearly. You notice that you don't need her to validate you. You notice that your value doesn't rise or fall based on someone else's attention. You notice that the only approval that matters is your own. And when that realization hits, you become untouchable. That's why silence is the weapon of the Stoic. It's not about being cold or cruel. It's about training yourself to no longer be controlled by external chaos. It's about teaching yourself that calmness is your power. And the illusion of indifference, whether real or imagined, becomes a shield that protects you from manipulation. She will sense it. She will feel it. She will notice the difference between a man who can't handle silence and the one who thrives in it. And once she feels that shift, once she sees that her games no longer affect you, she will realize she has only two choices: either rise to meet you at your level or fade away into irrelevance. So let me leave you with this. Never underestimate the illusion of indifference. Because once she believes you no longer care, she has no control left. And once you actually learn to embody that state of mind, you no longer need control, you have peace. If you understand this truth, if you feel the power of this silence, comment down below right now. My peace is worth more than her approval. Type it with conviction, because the man who learns this lesson never chases again. There's a reason silence is feared more than shouting. Because anger is predictable, but silence is unshakable. When you explode, when you scream, when you pour out paragraphs of emotional chaos, she sees everything she needs to see, that she still has power over you. She sees that her actions still control your emotions, that her silence or withdrawal was enough to push you off balance, and once she sees that, the battle is over. You've already surrendered. But silence? Silence is a different language. It's the language of men who refuse to be manipulated. It's the language of men who understand that power isn't proven in how loud you roar, but in how calm you remain when the storm is raging. When you choose silence over an emotional outburst, you send a message louder than any argument. I am in control of myself. I am not moved by games. I am not owned by chaos. Think about it. An emotional outburst is an open book. It tells her exactly where you stand. It tells her that you're still attached, still clinging, still bleeding energy. She can walk away knowing that she still has a grip on your heart, because you just proved it by unraveling in front of her. But silence? Silence is a locked vault. She has no clue what you're thinking. She has no clue how you feel. She has no clue if she even matters anymore. And that uncertainty eats her alive. This is why silence always trumps noise. A man who rants, who argues, who begs, is a man still bound by his emotions. But a man who stays silent is a man who has mastered them. He doesn't need to convince anyone of his worth. He doesn't need to prove his case. He doesn't need to fight for attention. He simply stands still, and his silence does the work for him. And let's not get it twisted. Choosing silence doesn't mean you feel nothing. It doesn't mean you're cold, or heartless, or numb. It means you are disciplined enough to master yourself before you attempt to master anyone else. It means you know that explosive reactions only reveal weakness, but silence reveals strength. It means you understand that words can be twisted, but silence cannot. Now think about how this looks from her perspective. When she withdraws, she's hoping to spark a reaction. She's hoping to see you spiral. She wants to know you still care, even if it's through anger. And when you give her that outburst, you feed her ego. But when you respond with silence, you starve it. She expected to feast on your energy, and instead she's left hungry, unsatisfied, wondering if she miscalculated everything. This is the heart of dark psychology, using restraint as your weapon. You're not playing on her level. You're not throwing tantrums. You're not scrambling for attention. You're operating in a space above her expectations, and that space terrifies her because she cannot control what she cannot predict. Men who master silence become untouchable because nothing rattles them. They don't argue with disrespect. They walk away. They don't beg for attention. They give it to themselves. They don't pour energy into chaos. They let chaos burn itself out while they remain calm, detached, immovable. And that right there is why silence beats emotional outbursts every single time. Understand this: emotional explosions drain you. They leave you weaker, exposed, embarrassed. But silence replenishes you. It keeps your dignity intact. It forces the other person to wrestle with themselves while you rise above it all. So the next time you feel that fire boiling inside, remember, roaring lions get caged. Silent lions rule the jungle. And if you feel the truth of this lesson, I want you to comment this down below. My silence speaks louder than anger. Type it, claim it, live it. Because the man who learns this will never again lose his power to an emotional outburst. Time. That's the secret ingredient most men never understand. They think silence is only powerful for a moment, for a few hours, maybe a day. But the truth is, silence doesn't weaken over time. It strengthens. The longer you hold it, the heavier it becomes. The longer you wait, the more powerful you grow. At first, silence feels small. It feels like a minor sting, a tiny shift in energy. She notices you haven't replied yet, and maybe she brushes it off. He's probably busy. He'll cave soon. She expects you to fold in the first round, like every other man who couldn't handle the tension. But when you don't, when hours turn into days, when days stretch into weeks, when your silence continues to hold steady, suddenly it's no longer small. Suddenly it's massive. Silence has weight, and the longer you carry it, the more it crushes the other side. It gnaws at her thoughts. It slips into her subconscious. She wakes up thinking about why you haven't reached out. She goes to sleep replaying every detail, every conversation, every moment she might have miscalculated. Your silence becomes a ghost in her mind, a presence she cannot shake. This is what I call the ghost effect. You may not be speaking, you may not be explaining, you may not even be physically around her, but your silence haunts her. It follows her when she's with her friends. It follows her when she scrolls through her phone. It follows her even when she tries to distract herself with someone else, because silence lingers in ways that words never can. The longer you wait, the more questions arise in her mind. Did he move on? Did he replace me? Did I lose him forever? Or is he just stronger than I thought? Each day that passes without you breaking is another day that feeds those doubts. And those doubts turn into obsession. Suddenly, she's the one who can't stop thinking about you. Suddenly, she's the one checking her phone, wondering if maybe, just maybe, you'll finally cave. But here's the key: you don't. And that's where the true power lies. Because time is the greatest amplifier of silence. One day of quiet can be ignored. A week of silence is harder to dismiss. A month? That's when she realizes this isn't a game anymore. This is who you are. A man who doesn't fold. A man who doesn't beg. A man who chooses his self-respect over temporary validation. Now let's look at the flip side. When men break too soon, they collapse all their power instantly. They turn silence into a failed bluff. It's like folding your hand in poker before the game even begins. But when you hold, when you sit there calmly, refusing to reveal your cards, that patience alone becomes the victory. Because patience isn't passive, it's dominance stretched across time. And here's the beauty of it. Silence not only unsettles her, it strengthens you. The longer you hold it, the more you realize you didn't actually need her response in the first place. You begin to feel your own self-sufficiency. You see that your worth doesn't come from whether or not she texts you back, but from how disciplined you remain in the face of temptation. Every day you don't break, you build a fortress inside yourself. A fortress no one can shake. This is the part most men never discover. Silence isn't just about her. It's about you. It's about becoming unshakable. The longer you wait, the more you condition your mind to be calm, steady, detached. You begin to master the most dangerous skill of all, the ability to sit in stillness while others drown in their own noise. That's why silence over time is the ultimate test. It's not about winning a petty game. It's about proving to yourself that you can endure. And when you endure longer than anyone expects, you stop being a man who chases. You become a man who commands. So remember this truth. Every day you wait, you grow stronger. Every hour you hold the line, you gain more control. Every moment you refuse to break, you step deeper into your power. If you feel this in your soul, if you understand that patience is the sharpest weapon, then comment this phrase right now. Time makes my silence unbreakable. Type it with conviction. Because the man who waits longer than anyone else becomes the man no one can control. Every game of silence has a breaking point. And if you stay disciplined long enough, it won't be you who cracks, it'll be her. Because the truth is, silence is not a weapon most people can wield for long. She may start out confident, certain she can hold out longer than you. She may believe she's in control, that her withdrawal will keep you crawling back. But as time passes, as your silence stretches beyond what she expected, the cracks begin to form. At first, it's subtle. She'll check her phone more often than usual. She'll hover over the message box, typing something, then deleting it. She'll scroll through your social media, trying to decode your silence through your activity. And every little thing you do or don't do suddenly feels loaded with meaning to her. You don't have to say a word, because your absence speaks louder than any paragraph ever could. Then curiosity transforms into frustration. She'll start to question herself. Why isn't he folding? Why isn't he chasing me? What does this mean? That frustration will lead to little slips. Maybe she posts something to get your attention. Maybe she tries to bait you with a cryptic message. Maybe she casually likes something of yours just to test if you'll respond. But when you hold the line, when you don't take the bait, that frustration builds into desperation. And here's the thing about desperation. It always reveals itself. Eventually, she will reach out. Maybe it's a small message. Hey. Maybe it's a random excuse. I just thought of you when I saw this. Maybe it's even disguised as anger. Wow, you really don't care anymore, huh? But make no mistake, every one of these messages, no matter how subtle or loud, is the same thing. It's her breaking point. It's proof that your silence outlasted hers. And the beauty of this is not just in what she does, it's in what it does to you. Because at that moment, you realize the truth. You didn't need to chase. You didn't need to beg. You didn't need to lose your dignity. You only needed patience. You only needed discipline. And by holding firm, you flipped the entire script. She who thought she had control is now the one seeking clarity. She who thought she could test your strength is now questioning her own. But let me take it a step deeper. Her breaking point isn't really about you. It's about the mirror your silence held up to her. It forced her to face the possibility that you're stronger without her. It made her question her place in your life. It showed her that the control she thought she had was an illusion. And that realization shakes her to the core, because every human being, no matter how confident, fears insignificance. And your silence forced her to feel it. And here's the dark irony. You don't even have to respond when she breaks. The very act of her reaching out is proof that you've already won. Proof that your silence was louder than any words you could have spoken. Proof that you are the one who dictated the rhythm of the interaction, not her. But there's another layer most men miss. The real victory isn't in making her break. The real victory is in proving to yourself that you could hold out long enough to witness it. That you had the discipline to resist the temptation to fold. That you chose your self-respect over your impulse. That you proved once and for all that you are not a man who cracks under pressure. You are the pressure. This is why silence is more than a tactic. It's a philosophy. It teaches you to be patient when others are impulsive. It teaches you to be calm when others are chaotic. It teaches you that the one who controls his tongue controls the entire interaction. And at her breaking point, all of that becomes clear. So remember this: every test of silence ends with someone breaking. Let it never be you. Let her be the one pacing the floor, rereading old texts, typing and deleting, losing her composure while you stand still, unshaken. Because when you master silence, you don't just win the game, you become the game. If you understand this lesson, if you feel the weight of this truth, type this into the comments right now. I am the silence that breaks others. Claim it. Because the man who can outlast anyone in silence is the man who no longer fears losing. Most men think silence is about her, about making her chase, about flipping the script and shifting the power. But here's the truth: the deepest effect of silence is not what it does to her, it's what it does to you. Silence transforms you from the inside out. It forges you into something rare in this world. A man who is not owned by his emotions. Let's be real. Most men are slaves to their impulses. They feel anxiety, they text, they feel anger, they rant, they feel fear, they chase. Their entire life is dictated by whatever emotion happens to hit them in the moment. And that's why they lose. That's why they get manipulated, tested, and discarded, because their emotions are visible, predictable, and controllable. But when you choose silence, you cut those chains. You no longer move on impulse. You no longer let fear push you into action. You no longer let anxiety dictate your behavior. Instead, you become deliberate. You choose when to act, and more importantly, when not to. And that level of control changes everything. At first, silence feels unnatural. You'll feel the urge to explain yourself, to reach out, to fix the tension. Your mind will scream, say something, do something, break this void. But every time you resist, every time you hold firm, you strengthen a muscle that few men ever develop, the muscle of restraint. And with each repetition, you grow more powerful. Soon, something shifts inside you. You begin to notice you no longer need to respond. You no longer feel the desperate itch for her attention. You no longer care about whether she understands or validates you. You realize something life-changing. Her silence cannot touch you because your silence is stronger. And that realization is freedom, because silence teaches you that peace is more valuable than validation. It teaches you that not every insult deserves a reply, not every test deserves a reaction, not every rejection deserves your energy. It teaches you that your worth is not determined by how quickly you can win someone back, but by how firmly you can stand without them. This is the inner transformation. The man who once begged, explained, defended, and argued becomes the man who simply observes. The man who once feared being alone becomes the man who thrives in solitude. The man who once thought silence was weakness becomes the man who realizes silence is strength. And here's the dark psychological edge. When people see that silence no longer rattles you, they know you've ascended beyond their control. They may try the old tricks, ignoring, baiting, pulling away, but you remain unmoved. Because silence has already forged you into something stronger, and strength that is forged in silence cannot be broken by noise. Think of it this way: fire burns hot, but it burns fast. Silence, however, is like steel forged in the cold. It takes longer, but once it's set, it's unbreakable. That's what happens to your character when you master this discipline. You become steel. You become unshakable. You become the kind of man who doesn't need to say much because his presence already says everything. And ironically, once you undergo this inner transformation, the external results take care of themselves. She notices, others notice. People feel it when a man is no longer desperate for their attention. They sense it in the way you carry yourself, in the calmness of your eyes, in the weight of your silence. They know you are no longer playing the same game. This is the real victory, not whether she texts back, not whether she breaks before you. The real victory is that you break the old version of yourself, the weak version, the needy version, the version that was controlled by fear, lust, and insecurity. You bury him in silence, and from that silence, the Stoic Soldier is born. So remember this: silence is not just a tactic, it's a transformation. It reshapes you into a man who cannot be swayed by chaos, who cannot be broken by absence, who cannot be controlled by anyone else's approval. And once you become that man, you will never lose yourself in the noise of others again. If you feel this truth, if you're ready to step into the version of yourself that silence forges, then comment this down below right now. Silence has made me unbreakable. Type it with conviction. Because the man who learns this lesson becomes a weapon, calm, patient, immovable. Now you see the truth. Silence isn't weakness. It's discipline. It isn't emptiness. It's presence. It isn't avoidance. It's control. Every moment you chose to stay silent instead of chasing, you weren't losing, you were winning. You weren't being ignored, you were being forged. You weren't being passive, you were becoming powerful. Think back through this journey. When you stayed silent, you unsettled her mind. When you refused to break first, you flipped the script. When the power dynamic shifted, you gained respect. When the illusion of indifference set in, she felt her control slip away. When you chose calm over emotional outbursts, you became untouchable. When time stretched and you still held firm, your silence grew heavier, stronger, more undeniable. And when she finally broke, it proved what you already knew. You are the one who controls yourself, and therefore, you control the game. But the greatest victory wasn't in her reaction, it was in your transformation. Because silence hardened you, it sharpened your discipline. It broke the chains of neediness, of fear, of emotional weakness. It taught you patience. It taught you restraint. It taught you that real power doesn't come from chasing others, but from mastering yourself. That's what Stoicism is all about. That's what dark psychology reveals. And that's what silence gave you, the keys to your own freedom. And now you have a choice. You can go back to the old way, explaining, arguing, begging, breaking first. Or you can step forward fully into this new mindset. You can embrace silence as a philosophy. You can choose to live as the man who no longer folds, no longer begs, no longer breaks. You can choose to live as the man whose silence is his power. Because that's what it means to become a Stoic soldier. A man who fights not with noise, but with discipline. A man who commands not with force, but with presence. A man who doesn't flinch, doesn't chase, doesn't break. A man who stands in silence while the world scrambles for noise, and in that silence he wins. So if you're ready to step into this brotherhood of silence, if you're ready to live as a Stoic soldier, then here's what I want you to do right now. Hit that like button, subscribe to this channel, and comment down below. I am a Stoic soldier. Type it, own it, declare it. Because the moment you do, you're not just watching a video, you're taking a vow. A vow to live with discipline. A vow to hold your ground. A vow to let your silence speak louder than any words ever could. Thank you for watching. Stay strong, stay silent, and remember, your silence is your power.